Welcome to In the Know and Black Girl Podcast presents Enter the Chat, a special video series that looks inside the thoughts that go on inside our group chat. This episode, we have Khadeen Ellis, and we'll be discussing love and relationships live from our living rooms. How are you doing, Khadeen?
I am doing well, thank God. This is not really my living room, but I did have to find a space that was quiet because, I've been juggling the boys and hubby's been back and forth filming. I've been filming. So I'm just happy to be in a space where I can kick it with some girls, have some girl time so we can chat because I've been lacking so much of that this year. So thank y'all for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. I know we have so much to dive in. This pandemic has definitely been interesting for us when it comes to dating, love, and relationships. We've discussed it a few times on the podcast about where we've been at different moments in these last 8 months. Some of us have dated virtually. Some of us have gotten ghosted. But I'm sure we'll all have a lot of questions. Just want to get a feeling for your beautifully millennial marriage that is always displayed on social media. We're all fans, so everybody.
Thank you, y'all. Thank you. It's funny because Deval and I, my husband, we've over time become this, social media goals when it comes to relationships. And we always say, we hate that because that's not necessarily what we started this for, but it kind of just evolved organically. And I guess that's kind of how we're able to sustain the content creating that we've had so far and kind of sustain this brand online is because everything that we've done so far has become super organic to who we are. And I feel like in a time where being politically correct or kind of tiptoeing around situations has become the norm, and honesty and transparency was not necessarily the way. I feel more recently like millennials at least have just been trying to be very transparent and honest about what they're dealing with, how we feel, past traumas, whatever it may be, to just kind of move forward in a more positive light. So, the whole energy shift that we had, I feel like once we started doing social media was just great because we started it as actors, just trying to put some content out there to see if we can kind of build our resume and boost our ability to be seen. And then it kind of evolved into us just kind of creating content around what it's like to be a Black millennial couple, working hard, raising these 3 boys. And we're super grateful for the opportunities that have come our way because of that. And I think the one way we're able to sleep at night is knowing that we're just being true to ourselves and true to why we're doing this to begin with. So it's been quite the journey, I will say.
Yeah. Love it.
I love it. I mean, the first time we met was through Daniqua, who made our candles for this show. And I had known about you guys because you guys did some video that went viral. I think it was like you walking down the street on Franklin and Jackson was protecting you because he didn't want nobody to look at you because you fine and stuff. And so I just always remember watching you all as a family, your growth, your love for each other, but also, you're a journalist, you're a host yourself. You came up as an actress, you're a working actress and a mom. You do so much that you guys have your podcast as well.
Yeah.
That you guys have like a huge following, and that time comes with criticism. And
of course,
one of the things that we saw go viral was a clip of Deval saying that he didn't understand something about marriage. Okay, so can you break it down and then your response to the reaction from that moment?
Yes. Okay. So this was about maybe 3 weeks ago. Of course, Deadass Podcast with Khadeen and Deval. That's our podcast that we have that comes out weekly. And in this particular episode, we were discussing monogamy and kind of the ins and outs of monogamy. What are the expectations? Where do we fall short of those expectations? So the beautiful things about clips are that they're just that. So usually people don't listen to the extended version of where the clip came from. So it's hard to kind of put context around a clip or to the narrative, then kind of leaves room for it to be created elsewhere. So in that particular clip, he was pretty much saying that I pressured him into marrying, to be married. And it was really one of those clips that, it got so much backlash. I heard, because I'm not a very big Twitter user. I'm more on Instagram, but I heard that like we got dragged to and from. They was like, divorce him, sis, divorce him. And it was just like, yeah. And then the guys were like, here go these women. They want to be married, but they don't want to have sex every day. Da 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 da. And I was just like, whoa, we had no idea that clip would have caused such an uproar. But in the entire podcast episode, I think the word pressure became a trigger word for me and many women out there. It's like there's certain words that you just can't say. Like I even did a podcast episode recently with a group of women who I'm pretty close to, Melanie Fiona, Ashley Chia, and Beck Gross. And there was the word allow. Like your husband allows you to post certain pictures on social media. I was like, last time I checked, I was a grown-ass woman and I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do. So, certain words become a trigger. So like words like allow or words like pressure kind of just send off all these red flags. But pretty much in that moment, I felt like when I was 27 years old and looking to be married, there were certain expectations and standards that I had for my life. And there were certain things that I anticipated that I was going to be doing in a certain time frame. And I think sometimes as women, we also too have this timeline in our head where we're like, okay, by 21, I'm going to graduate college and then maybe I'll do grad school or I'll start my career. And then I'll fall in love by 25. We'll be happily ever after having our first baby at 27. And then the rest will be history. Whereas I felt like I needed to stick to whatever this timeline was in my head. So for me, I didn't foresee it as him pressuring for him to be married to me, but it was more like, hey, this is where I stand with things. We've been dating for 8 years. What is the intention here? Because I kind of want to know what we're doing. Are we going to be doing this like forever, or have I just invested 8 years into a relationship that may not be going out, other places? And though I was very confident with where we were at that time and in that space, I think he kind of felt the pressure in turn because there were couples around us as well who were also getting engaged. And you kind of just see what your friends are doing. And then you have the family that's like, hey guys, so what's next? Family gets to be like, hey, what's next? You're married now. So when's the kids coming? You have one baby. When's the second one coming? Oh, you got 3 boys. When's the girl? So it's that those lines of questions that can be very daunting to a couple. So I could see where he felt that pressure in that moment, but it really ultimately wasn't pressure per se. It was just him having to decide. He felt like he was getting an ultimatum from me. And it was a disagreement at the time because it was kind of like, hey, it's not an ultimatum, but this is just where I stand. And I'd rather be forthcoming with my intentions, forthcoming with what I want. And then you can kind of decide. I feel like in relationships, the issues arise when you take someone's choice away by not being honest. So I always want to make sure that I give you a choice and the option to know where I stand, and then you can move accordingly. And at least I know it'll be completely what you want in your happiness and what you want out of your life. And then if we can coexist and do this together, then all the better. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what, that was the issue around that whole little thing. And we actually did a follow-up podcast that was just aired on Wednesday where we talked about the word pressure, and it's more extended where we talk more about like, where we were in that space and time. And it ultimately boiled down to DeVal feeling some kind of way about some things that he didn't want to say to me in that moment because he felt like it would hurt my feelings. And me too, feeling like, damn, I don't want to say this because it might hurt his feelings. We just wanted to be together so badly, but almost didn't know how to be. So here we are 18 years later, 10 married. And now it's like, damn, if I had known that 11 years ago when we got engaged, we totally would have moved differently and made different decisions. But I mean, there's no regrets here because we feel like we're where we are today because of the decisions that we made, and we kind of fought through it. So, that was that little clip that went viral.
Right. There's a negative tone on ultimatum when it shouldn't be. Sure. I'm giving you a choice. And although one of those choices you do not want, I think it always comes with this negative tone, which it doesn't. I love ultimatums. I love to give people the choice because I want to have that choice too. I would like to have that conversation with, hey, this is what I have planned. If you're on board, let me know. If you're off board, that's okay too. But we're going to have to figure that out. Yeah. So
think about the word pressure too. Pressure can burst pipes or pressure can create diamonds. Okay. So what are we going to do? Which way are we going to go? You know what I mean?
That's what I want to say. I do want to say, and I want to commend you on this because personally, my experiences has always been to fall in love with potential. So I think the fact that you set up intentions, like you said, Deani, is very important. So I just want to make the clear distinction for the people listening that Potential is just that. That's what we foresee. Right. That's what we want. That is the wish. But for you to go to him and be like, listen, this is what I need. This is what I want. What's up? Like Deani said, if we're not on the same page, that doesn't mean that I necessarily have to leave you.
Right. And you're going to have to just deal.
Exactly. So I just want to be very clear that intention and potential, they need to be two separate things.
Absolutely.
There's also a very clear understanding and level of transparency between you guys that even in the fact that there's a follow-up episode to explain, like, this is what's happening. And something that I noticed, because again, I'm such a super fan of you guys. Like, so in the way that you guys develop content, even, there are so many learning moments, even when you're not into it. Like Gia and I were talking about it on the side. There are moments where you're like, why are you recording? Or when one of the kids are talking to their father, doing something, like, what are you doing? This is a real life thing happening, but at the same time. So I want to kind of dive into that too. Like, how do you as a mom and a wife and a social media maven split all three of those personalities? And like,
I don't. That's the thing. I always get the question about like balance, and I'm just like, I don't. Like, I've come to terms with the fact that sometimes something is going to fall by the wayside, and I've just learned to give myself grace through it all, because it becomes to be too much. And I think my biggest issue that I've dealt with was knowing when to detach and when to disconnect. So I get asked the question sometimes, like, for example, what's your idea of self-care? Like, give me a self-care day or moment for you. And that's become for me now putting my phone down. Like putting my phone down and saying, you know what, I'm going to take this time to completely detach so that I can connect with my children. I told the story about Cairo one time trying to tell me a story. He's my middle baby, my super personality. And we were, I'm in the middle of trying to post something because I had an integration, and I'm talking to my manager to make sure that the link was right. And there was so many things happening in that moment. And he just wanted to talk to me and tell me something in that moment. And I was like, yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. And then he's like, mommy. And he like screamed my name so loud. And he's like, I'm talking to you. Look at me. And I was like, oh, and I literally like was in tears when I like bent down and was eye level with him. And I was like, I'm so sorry, buddy. Like, that could have waited 5 minutes, So it was a moment like that, unfortunately, that took me to say, you know what, Khadeen, sometimes you have to know how to compartmentalize and then prioritize. So it took a complete shift in my schedule. It took just even working with my manager more closely to say, you know what, I'm blocking out certain times for family, or Deval and I know it's a collective agreement that Sunday is family night. So, or family day rather. So very minimal phone usage on Sunday. It's a thing where you kind of have to set boundaries, because we're also in a time where people expect and they feel like they're entitled to this instant access to you, and this immediate response needs to happen. And I'm just like, I can walk away from my phone for 24 hours and not reply to your text or email. Like you don't have that control over me and my time. You don't. So it's in a point now where I'm just kind of reconditioning people, because for so long I've been so accessible that it's now a reconditioning of folks to say, hey, it's no love lost. I don't feel no kind of way towards you, but for my mental health and for my sanity and for my self-care and for my family, I'm going to need to sometimes disconnect. So sometimes you even see on my social media, like I may not post a story for a day or two. I'll just put up something, hey y'all, mental health day, and I'll just clock out, and I just won't, because people will then check for you. I haven't heard from you in 2 days, or we've had, followers and supporters say, hey, y'all haven't posted a video in 2 or 3 days. Y'all good, because we've conditioned people to expect things from us daily, so we understand it and we love the support and all that, but it really requires knowing when to disconnect and when to be tuned in, because when I'm in, I want to be all the way in. I want to be able to do things like this, meet with people. And I mean, now in the Zoom age, a lot of Zooms happening, but I want to be able to do this to then further my career. I want to be able to take the auditions. Right now I'm filming a show in Atlanta, so I'm back and forth. So it's really just a matter of trying to balance and prioritize and just leaving the time for me and my family. That's ultimately what matters. Like, the jobs, will find somebody else. To the job, I'm disposable, but to my family, I'm not.
Amen.
But even as a creator, you have to like live life. You have to be able to turn that off in order to give to the people. You have to be like, you can't just do the same thing. You're going to have to experience some more in order to bring your audience more information, more knowledge, more learning. You know what I'm saying?
You're so right about that, Deani. Like, I've even been using my Audible now. Like, I have a partnership with them for the year, and I'm like actually really taking time to listen to books, because I sometimes feel like I don't have the time to sit and tangibly hold a book and read, but I want to be able to engage in conversations with people and have things to say and expand my thoughts and pull from different sources. And I'm unable to do that if I don't have the time. You know, so sometimes on these long plane rides, if I don't have a physical book in my hand, I have my AirPods in and I'm just listening and trying to absorb information so I can then go back and create content. How am I going to create and be creative if I'm not absorbing the things around me in real time? You know what I mean?
So you have to reflect the times. That's what Nina Simone said. In order to do that, you got to know of the times.
Yeah.
So,
hello.
Absolutely.
All right now.
Absolutely.
Speaking of having children and being married for as long as you have you figured out love?
Ooh, that's a good one. Love is very layered for me, because I also think I've figured out too that there's different ways to love. And not everybody needs to be loved the same way. And I discovered that even with my husband over the evolution of our relationship for the past 18 years, things that I used to be, you know, so like would just make my heart melt, or I'd just be so in love with, or I'm just like, oh my God, this is it. They don't necessarily work for me right now, because Khadeen at 18 requires something different than Khadeen at 25, and now Khadeen at 30 something, you know, so there's different ways that you have to, 30 something. So there's different ways that I appreciate being loved, and people talk about love languages and all that, you know, and then my husband has his certain kind of ways where he's pretty, I want to say he's been pretty even keeled the entire time. Like, there's just certain things that he likes, and he's a creature of habit. So that kind of makes things easier for me sometimes to say, okay, I know this is what he needs to feel loved in that moment. But then also too, it evolves totally, completely differently when you have children. Now there's this birth of Khadeen, the mother, this birth of Khadeen, the nurturer, this birth of Khadeen, who I am to Jackson as an individual, to Cairo as an individual, to Kaz. Like, I've also realized that not each child requires something different from them. Some children require positive affirmations or affirmations of love. Some just want the touches and the feels. Like my baby Kaz, he don't want kisses, he don't want hugs, he don't want none of that stuff. But if I look him in the eye, I'm like, Kaz, are you mommy's baby? And he's like, yep, I'm a good boy, I'm mommy's baby, I love you. Like, that will be his thing. So it's really just like, it's amazing to me when you become a mom, especially to multiple children, that they each are so different. Like, how do two people make so many different personalities? You know what I mean? Yeah. So just it's every day of love for me is a new discovery, especially as my children evolve and as they grow, and realizing that they require different things, that they learn differently, that they show their love differently, and they receive love differently. We have a very strict, Deval and I as parents, a very strict idea of having conscious parenting is what we call it. And it's really just trying to be tuned into each child and what they need, and not trying to group them together as much, because I think that we feel the effects sometimes of even having that happen from just our own experiences, you know, those traumas that have come from generations that have been kind of passed down, or, you know, our parents didn't have the handbook, nor do we. They did the best that they could, but just knowing to pinpoint things that have happened to us maybe in our childhood and the way we were grown, now we can kind of change and alter those things moving forward, or we know what to look for in our children. So that for me, Rebecca, is just like encompassing all of love, because I want to be able to love my husband in his entirety. I want to be able to love each of my children in their entirety. And then I want to know how to be able to allow myself to be loved the way I need to be loved. Sometimes I have to vocalize that. You know, sometimes, and I have to also love myself enough to know sometimes when sis needs to tap out for like a day, or, you know, and just chill out and figure out how I can just pour back into myself. So that's a great question, Rebecca, because I feel like there's so many layers to what love is, and it's ever evolving for me.
So I have a question to kind of piggyback and follow up on that. How do you communicate the love that you need? Because that's not always easy. How do you, and what's the difference between 18-year-old Khadeen and married 30-something Khadeen, you know, communicate that? Because I'm sure 18-year-old Khadeen could have been somebody completely different, like, I need you to do this, or very passive and just waiting for it to happen. So how has that changed for you? How did you grow in your communication to show the love or receive the love?
Right. So 18-year-old Khadeen, of course, was like fresh out of my parents' house, you know, in college, coming from a very strict West Indian background. So I really did not have the opportunity to be out in these streets just hanging out and stuff like that. So the fact that I found Deval, or we got together in my first, pretty much my second semester of my first semester of sophomore year of college. So at that point, I didn't really know what love was, but I did know that I really liked Homie, and I was like, all right, I feel like we could do this. And it was very simple things like just hugs and kisses and sex, and that's pretty much what love was to me in that moment. And at that time too, I was very passive about the things that I wanted because I wasn't sure how to vocalize it. In my household, my parents weren't very vocal, they weren't very expressive, they weren't the communicating type, and that was something that within their relationship kind of trickled down to my brother, my sister, and I. So once I met Deval, he actually came from the opposite situation where his parents and his brother and his sister, they were very vocal, and anything that happened, any way they felt, they were allowed to express it, and they made sure they got to the bottom of and the root of issues in that moment. So we came from two very different upbringings. So the households were very different. So when we finally got together, it required a lot of me. I guess he would put it as he had to try to kind of pull teeth to get from me like what I wanted or how I felt. And I kind of felt like that was me complaining. And I felt like I didn't want to complain because I didn't want to be a bother. So there were things that I felt like I could just deal with it because it's like whatever. But he was like, no, I need you to tell me how you feel, tell me what you want, tell me what you need. So that actually evolved through college, and I want to say into our early 20s. And then I might have been a little bit too vocal because your girl was like, listen, this is what I need. I was like, okay, so now that you've opened up this big can of worms, this is what I'm going to need. And I was very, and that became intentional, Khadeen, like, all right, so either we is or we ain't, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but that just helped even more. And I think that's why we've been able to just kind of last and transform over the years, because it then was very just transparent conversation. We have a policy as well where it's like, you see it, you feel it, you say it. Like, don't let things fester. Don't like wait till the next time, because sometimes we've had moments where he might explode about something and I might explode about something over one thing that I think is just a little moment. But he's like, well, you did X, Y, Z, you did this. I said, oh, so we pulling receipts now. All right. So since we pulling receipts, let me
right.
And then I'm pulling my receipts too. And it's like,
child.
Right?
Yes.
So he was just like, no, we can't do this receipt thing. He's like, we need to talk about this in this moment, and then tear up the receipt and throw it away. I was like, all right, cool. So so there was a whole evolution of that, because 18-year-old Khadeen was just very kind of passive and like, oh, whatever. And then I kind of evolved out of that, and now I'm telling you all the things and everything that I need. And I think that's really what has helped over the years. So I hope that answers your question. I forget how we got to that, but
yeah. I have a question about, so you said you guys have been together for 18 years, you've been married for 10, which is incredible. Congratulations on the 10th year.
Thank you. Thank you. Gia, you were supposed to be at our vow renewal in July in Jamaica.
When the rescheduling is there, sis, I
will be all right
on the plane.
Okay, but, just making sure.
But I do have a question about the advice, right? To Khadeen, who's walking down the aisle and about to say I do to Deval, who is now this young man who you've told him the truth. This is it. This is what I need. What piece of advice, if you were in your bridal suite, what piece of advice would you have given yourself about the journey ahead, about marriage, about what to expect?
Gia.
Oh man, Gia, that's loaded, because I've said, had I known at 20 something years old, I might not have done this, or I might not have been so pressed to do it in that moment. Because like I said, in my mind, there was this whole timeline happening, like, girl, like you pushing 20, your late 20s, you got to have kids. You want to do this, you want to do that. So I would have told myself, you have time.
Yes.
Calm down. Like, you have time to really enjoy and figure out who Khadeen is. And I think the one thing that I did not do prior to marriage and in my early 20s was really establish Khadeen the individual. And I didn't establish Khadeen, what makes you happy, Khadeen? What makes you happy outside of Deval? That was extremely, extremely important. And that's something that I skipped over and I glazed over in my early 20s. And then it required me in the first couple years of my marriage trying to figure out, okay, well, you're not making me happy. I had a baby. The baby is not, I mean, the baby makes me happy, but I'm just saying, like, do I feel completely fulfilled being a mother? And do I feel like I'm being the best mother I can be? Because I ultimately am not happiness. So it's just, I'm not happy. So in this, trying to find happiness through somebody or with somebody is a very difficult process, and it's a very slippery slope, because then if that person does something and you don't like, or that person does something to let you down, then all your happiness is involved in that. Yes. So Khadeen prior to the foot of the aisle, Khadeen, before you put on that dress and before you say yes to an engagement, or before you give these expectations and these standards that you have, realize who Khadeen is, the whole person, and realize what she wants. And that's super important. And I speak that to my sister, who's 10 years younger than me now, and she's, in a relationship and stuff. And I just tell people, like, figure out who you are as an individual before you then try to coexist with somebody for the rest of your life. So
this idea of like two true things existing in a space but being in conflict with each other, or possibly being in conflict with each other, has really had me like trying to work through how that's even possible. So when you speak about knowing who you are and being an individual in a relationship, and also inviting compromise into a relationship, how do you resolve compromise while still being yourself? And when do you know that, like, this is a line that I will not cross, like this is my endpoint?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I guess as cliche as it sounds, you have to say it. Like, passive Khadeen, I feel like at 18 might have just kind of glazed over things that I know I would have like not wanted to compromise on or not sacrifice with. But now it's kind of like, okay, now that I've figured out who I am, it may not have been in my late 20s, but kind of coming into my own, I want to say around my, late, early to mid 20s, mid 30s. Now I'm kind of like, okay, this is the Khadeen that I'm happy with. This is Khadeen who's still ever evolving and changing, but still is aware of the fact that she's in a committed relationship. She made a commitment to someone. She put the pressure on him, as he would say, to be in this marriage. So then it requires me to then say, you know what? There's certain things that are just hard no's for me, and we just openly discuss it. And there's certain things that are hard no's for him. And then there's moments when you just kind of say, you know what, this doesn't really matter to me. So you pick your battles. I know that sounds cliche as well too, but there's certain things that I know I can kind of digress and say, you know what, it's cool, you got that, because that's not a hard no for me or a hard yes. I'm kind of indifferent. And we really just try to respect each other's opinions and respect each other's wants. And I'm fortunate to have somebody in my court and in my corner, and in a husband who is like completely 110% supportive of so many things that I want to do. And it's Khadeen too, after the children. It's Khadeen, me just recently now trying to figure out what I want to do now that I'm done having children. I feel like I've, done what I had to do in terms of like pouring into my family for so many years. And as I continue to do that, I still have to kind of figure out who is now Khadeen, the individual, Khadeen, the career woman, getting that back on track as well too. So it's been great because, my husband is super 110% supportive of that. And we really do have a very open line of communication where we know that there's really no areas of gray and there's nothing left to be guessed, because we know exactly what we want in that moment. And it's something that we discuss going forward, because at first I was doing more journalism, for example, journalism hosting work. And then I kind of put my toe into acting, and I'm like, oh, I want to do some more acting. And my husband was like, well, I didn't know I was marrying an actress per se. And I was like, well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? So I can't be an actress either. And he's like, well, no, I just didn't know that was something you wanted to do. And I was like, well, I didn't know either, but I just figured it out. So what we going to do?
Right.
Okay.
Dreams change.
What we going to do? You know what I mean? Dreams change. Yeah. They evolve. I evolved, and he's just like, well, there's certain things that go into a woman being in the business and whatever. And I was like, and I'm equipped to deal with it.
Period.
Yeah. Period. So,
and he knows
so I was
that.
like, yeah, and he knows that too. So I'm just like, okay, just as long as you know. Exactly. So it's super important to be with someone who's not going to stifle that growth and stifle that change, but instead embrace it and see how they can help you get to the next level. And I think that's what the partnership is about.
So really quickly, I just want, because I think it's important, especially the times that we're going through with this pandemic and having to quarantine and stay home. How do you resolve conflict when there's no space? How do you, no space for you to leave? How do you handle those situations?
Sometimes you just need a time out, and not just the kids. an actual time out. So we've done something kind of interesting where, because now everything is pretty much closed, and out in LA where we are, like a lot of things are just closed. So Chad, it's come down to literally like, I'm going to take a drive. Like, I just need some alone time. I've even had my car parked in the driveway, and I would walk out the house, get in a car in the driveway, not even go nowhere, but just sit in the car.
Yep.
Just sit in the car and just sit. And sometimes you just need that. Yeah, you need that. And I'm like, we going back and forth. Like, sometimes being too close to somebody in too close of quarters for too long is also very toxic, no matter how much you love each other. So sometimes it just requires just like getting out, or like go take a jog on the treadmill. Like, it's literally just come down to doing something physical or just completely being alone, because alone time is also very important. And it was hard to find that in a household where it was me, my husband, and my 3 boys, my mom, and my dad all quarantined together for like 5 months. Wow. So yeah, that was interesting. If it told me one thing though, it's like, God forbid this happens again, I'm gonna need a bigger house, bro, with some more space, so we got more places to hide. Okay, I'm gonna need a wing to myself to hide.
Right, because I was up in my bathroom hiding, child, and I only lived with one other person, so I could just imagine. I don't know where I'd be going.
Listen, even trying to get it in sometimes, I was like, where are we gonna go today? Because the kids will bust into the bedroom. I was like, let's go in the closet. They won't find us. If they can't, I'm in the closet. I would text him like, meet me in the closet.
Yeah.
Gotta keep it spicy during quarantine too.
Well, thank you, Khadeen, so much for sitting down with us and talking about the ins and outs of millennial marriage, and, more about, Khadeen, the woman, the individual, which I love learning about today. And we will continue to uplift you and support you, sis.
Thank you.
We always, when that show come out, when that movie come out, we always gonna be out.
Actually, today my Christmas movie came out, The Business of Christmas. So that's my first film back out today on BET Plus. Yes, thank you guys.
We out here.
Yes. On BET Plus, and I'm also filming. I'm filming season 2 of Bigger as well on BET Plus. I have a role on 2 episodes. So I'm starting to get back.
Girl, you doing it. You out here.
It's such a good show. Thank you, ladies.
I just canceled. It's too much. It's too many different. This one, that one. But just for you.
Thank you. Just for the month, and then you got to wait for Bigger.
I just hope you know how much you mean to like women, especially single women, married women, like the women who follow you and love you and see your family.
I love that. Thank you.
See you chase your dreams also is so inspiring and so empowering. And even just to know you, like, I knew you socially first, but to know you personally and to see you, I tell you all the time, you are a light. I love you. I'm proud of you. I root for you.
I love you
everything.
Too, sis. I appreciate y'all so much.
We just here for you forever. That's it.
Thank you.
For life.
I needed this. Let me tell y'all, I needed this because I definitely had some ruts over the past couple months, and I was just like, really, I think what the pandemic forced me also to realize was like, or trying to figure out too, like what my purpose was. And I feel like I was getting some conflict there, because when I thought I had it figured out, all of this happened, and I was like, well, throw all that other shit away. Like, my family is really what matters, especially going through all of the social injustice and raising 3 Black men, and everything that was happening was just so daunting. And I definitely had moments where I was like, F this career, F the TV. Like, I just want to be there for my boys and for my husband. Right. But I also had that inner fire that's like, girl, but you got so much else to do, So thank you guys for a platform like this. I needed this camaraderie, and I needed this girl talk, and I needed this uplifting. So just as much as you feel like I've poured into you, you guys have poured into me, and I love you for that. So thank you.
Always gonna be behind you. There. Thank you, Khadeen. Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys for tuning in with us. To check out more episodes, check out intheknow.com. I'm Scotty Beam.
I'm Gia Peppers.
I'm Bex Francois.
I'm Safira M.
And I'm Alicia P. See you next time.
See you next time, honey.
Bye.